This is Erica Pitera back with my father, Tommy Pitera. Go ahead and talk.
All right. In spite of Phil Carlo, I have documentation backing my claims. For example, I have a letter where Phil Carlo finally admits that he tells me, I know now that Richard Kalinsky was not involved with Roy DeMeo. I know now that Richard Kalinsky did not kill Roy DeMeo. He didn't kill Roy DeMeo, and he didn't, and Kalinsky also didn't kill the other 299 mob-related hits. Like I stand by what I said, there would not be nobody left. And I told Phil Carlo, he wants to go backpedal that he believed at the time that Kalinsky did kill these individuals. I tell him, hey, I go, if I tell you I was involved in the King assassination, the Kennedy assassination, the attempted assassination of the Pope, are you going to believe me? Then in these letters, which I go back with him, he's trying to convince me, Richard Ramirez. He did this also another ridiculous book, the Night Stalker. He's trying to tell me that Richard Kalinsky's cousin slept on a pillowcase filled with 9 shrunken heads. 9 shrunken heads. I'm doing everything not to laugh right now.
Yes, no.
and then, and like I said, this Phil Carl goes back and forth with me. When you see these letters, which he will post, he's constantly badgering me about my childhood, about my martial arts training, about my father, about my family. Which, like I said, I do not talk to reporters, I do not talk to authors, I do not talk to the press. Anything which I know, I'm taking to the grave. Now, anyway, if you look at let's start with he says the Piteras came from the Campania region. The Piteras did not come from the Campania region. Now, on my mother's side, my mother on her paternal side, we came from Naples. So I'm 1/4 came from the Campania region. He does not know where the other 3/4 of where we came from. And by that, my mother is 100% Italian. I don't know where this nonsense came up that my mother's part German, part Polish. Now, he talks about me marrying a woman by the name of Carol Bogutsky. There is no Carol Bogutsky. Now, John Bogutsky, was my father's best friend who married my father's sister, Angelina Pitera. Like I said, this Phil Carlo just makes things up. Now, because I tell him nothing about my childhood, he doesn't let it go. He doesn't let it go. For example, he has me dressed as a hippie. I grew up in Gravesend. I didn't grow up in California, in San Francisco. I didn't have flowers in my hair. I'm a hippie. I met this guy, and then he knows nothing about my childhood. He knows nothing about my father. He never got in his wheelchair and rolled up to my father and said, Mr. Pitera, could I talk to you? He knows nothing about my father. My father is tougher than I could ever be. My father is like 5'11 and a half. He boxed. My father fought against the Japs all through New Guinea, all through the southern Philippines, 2 campaigns. And New Guinea was hell. It was hell for the Australians, hell for the Japs, hell for the Americans. It was brutal hand-to-hand fighting. The German was a better soldier, but the Japa was more fanatical. They didn't ask for no quarter, and they didn't get no quarter.
This call is from a federal prison.
You didn't take prisoners. They took no prisoners. The Australians didn't take no prisoners. The Americans didn't take no prisoners, and the Japs didn't take no prisoners. Like that, this man knows nothing about my father. Then he wants to come about with this ridiculous story of me being slapped and kicked and beat up and abused. All this nonsense. My father taught me how to box when I was like 7 years old. He taught me basic World War II hand-to-hand combat. And in fact, that was probably the reason why I started going to karate at the age of 12. Not because I'm watching Bruce Lee. I mean, this Phil Carl just makes things up. Just makes things up. And like I said, and if this movie is anything based on that book, it's really going to be a comedy. Like I said, he has me dressed as a hippie. He has me dressed as a Hasidic Jew assassinating people. He has me dressed as an Orthodox rabbi assassinating people. And of course, we can't leave out that he has me dressed as a woman assassinating men looking for romance. Look at that. You look at in that second-rate shoddy book. Look at the pictures. Look how big my arms are in that book. And I'm over there, and he wants to try to mislead the readers that I'm going into bars dressed as a drag queen, eliminating people.
Yeah, that's not gonna
Now,
work.
it's total. It's beyond ridiculous. I don't know where he comes up with these stories. Now, all right, let's talk about my martial arts training. I never provided him with any information about my martial arts training, and like I just said, I believe it was my father teaching me basic World War II hand-to-hand combat training that he learned in the army that I decided to go into the martial arts. But like I said, he knows nothing about my instructors, nothing about what system I trained in, nothing about not, nothing. And what does he do? He makes up names. He says I go to Japan and I trained under a sensei named Hiroshi Matsumi. I believe that's the name. I don't know because nobody knows this. He just makes this name up. He probably just got the yellow pages and looked up some Japanese name and let's throw that in. I told him nothing. I told him nothing about my time in Japan. So what does he do? He makes things up. Like for example, he says, "Oh, I've been shying away from Italian food." Look, I love Italian food. I grew up Italian food. Yes, I love Japanese food. I love sushi. I love tempura. I love beef sukiyaki. And I also love Chinese food and Korean food. What Phil Carlo don't know, not only did I spend time in Japan, I also spent time in Korea and in Hong Kong. Like I said, this guy, Phil Carlo, it is a joke. And like I said, if that movie's gonna be based on that book, it's gonna be a comedy. It's gonna be a comedy. That's what it. And then we got the right guy playing it, a comedian.
Yeah.
Yes, Davison. All right, now let's talk about the neighborhood. All right, Phil Carlo knows nothing about the neighborhood. He wasn't getting in his wheelchair, rolling up and down Avenue U, going into the social clubs, going into the bars, going into the cafes, going into the coffee shops. He wasn't. But he wants to mislead the reader to believe that he knows the neighborhood. He has, and then in the book he depicts every woman from the neighborhood. They're all hooers. They're all coke hooers. They're all loose women. They're all lesbians. They're all lesbians. Look, let's take Phyllis Birdie. Now, I'm not a big fan of Phyllis Birdie, but Phil Carl has her as a sexual pervert that normal intercourse and oral sex does nothing for her. She has to have sex with 2, 3 men at the same time. She's a coke hooer. She goes from bar to bar looking for men to sleep with who has coke. That is an out and out lie. But first of all, he puts this in because Phil Carl to me is a sexual degenerate. In one of the letters, he tells me he's writing a novel about child molesters infiltrating the Catholic Church, and he says, "I'm sure you're going to appreciate it. Who the hell wants to read a book about child molesters? I hate child molesters and rapists more than I hate rats, and that's saying a lot." Now,
Yeah.
so he has to have this perverted sexual garbage in his book. And who does he target? He targets Phyllis Birdie. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Phyllis Birdie. Phyllis Birdie was not going from guy to guy looking to pick up, get high with coke or whatever. Phyllis Birdie was a cocaine dealer, and she was moving big. That was the reason why the NYPD target her. That's why the NYPD on September 21st, 1987, locked her up. If Phyllis Birdie, if you listen to Phil Carlo, was just going from bar to bar,
This call is from a federal prison.
bar to bar, man to man, looking to get cocaine, looking to get high, the NYPD couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. Now, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Phyllis Birdie, but I'm not going to sit back while Phil Carlo, because he has to have his perverted sex in the book. He did the same thing with Kalinsky in the Iceman. He said Kalinsky came home and he saw his mother on his back in the afternoon, her legs straight in the air in the afternoon, getting pounded by a stranger. I don't believe that. No matter, even though he paid Kalinsky $10,000 to write that cheap, sleazy, two-rate book, The Iceman, no, who is going to actually tell an author, I came home and I saw my mother getting hammered by some stranger with her legs straight up in the air? Nobody. Now, so like he said, he has to put his sleeves, and then he turns around and he says that Phyllis is sleeping with half the mobsters in New York, and that she's with Eddie Leno. Phyllis was not with Eddie Leno. She's with Frank Gangi. If she was with Eddie Leno, Frank Gangi would have nothing to do with her. If she was with Eddie Leno, she wouldn't be going from guy to guy, bar to bar, because people would not want to be involved in a situation like that. Nobody would want to have anything. In fact, this Kalinsky seems to be more obsessed with Eddie Leno than he is with me. Just like he don't know me, he don't know Eddie Leno, he never met Eddie Leno, he never spoke to Eddie Leno. Like, he has me, and I have black hair. I don't have black hair. I have brown hair. You don't even know what I look like, this Phil Carlo. So now let's get back to Phyllis. All right. Now, Phyllis, like I said, she's not a good person, but she's not a sexual pervert. She's not a good person, because after she gets arrested by the NYPD narcotic squad, she decides she's going to do no time or very little time. And who does she give up? Frank Gangi. That's her supplier. She knows about his operation. He's provided her with a quarter of a kilo of cocaine, a half a kilo of cocaine, a kilo of cocaine. Like I said, that's why the NYPD moved on her. Not because she's some coke bouncing from guy to guy to guy. And like I said, Phil Carlo never got in his wheelchair and went into the Espionage Lounge, never got in his wheelchair and rolled up to the bar and bought rounds for the patrons in the Just Us Lounge, never walked into the wrong number or the ad. He does not know anything about the nightlife scene in New York. I don't even in Gravesend or Bensonhurst. I don't know what he was doing in the city. If he was rolling or if he was going into the clubs with his wheelchair, I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, let's get back. Who killed Phyllis Birdie? I'll tell you who killed Phyllis Birdie. Frank Gangi's control agent. That's who killed Phyllis Birdie. Because, like I said, on September 21st, 1987, Phyllis Birdie's arrested by the NYPD. She's not a stand-up chick. She's not gonna say, "Hey, I'm gonna do my time like a stand-up woman." No, she wants to do no time or very little time. Let's hold this off from there. I will continue this conversation on Phyllis Birdie, the NYPD, tomorrow.
Okay, let me turn it off. I'm turning the recording
Shut
off.
it off.